Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melissa Caprio.
Everybody, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. How are you guys doing? It's Wednesday, my favorite day of the week. I have a really cool guest today. She's an artist, a choreographer, a creative, and an author, Alexandra Beller, and she's going to join me in just a few minutes. So I have some announcements that I want to make. Well, first of all, if you're hearing me for the first time, I want to say welcome. And just so you know that we do record the show live. And if you're listening and it's October 15th at 4 p.m. Eastern time, you're listening to us live. But every show goes up on all the podcasting platforms. It goes on Om Times Radio in the archives. And it goes on my website, postcardstotheuniverse.com. In the podcasting section, there will be a bio about the guests that I am talking with that day. So please go through. You can listen anytime you want. So the announcement that I want to make is you're listening to me on radio, and starting in November, I'm transferring the show. It's still going to be on radio, but it's also going to be on Om Times TV, and I'm going to be on television also. So we're going to have the show video and radio. I'm going down, though. It's just with the video, it's too difficult to do every Wednesday. So my new schedule will be the first and the third Wednesdays of every month. I'm very excited about it. So I just wanted to share with you all. And for my regulars who I just adore you, thank you so much. You'll get to see us on, it streams live on YouTube, on Om Times TV YouTube. And Chris, my producer, is going to try to stream it live on my YouTube channel too, which is Postcards to the Universe. If we can't do it live, you know I will put it back up there, and I'll always have links to it all the time. So I definitely will be sharing that. And also, anybody who's interested and who likes to do online events. There's a really cool one that I am a part of. It's called The Abundant Life, a Harvest of Celebration of Spirit and Expansion. I am giving a talk on October 26th, which is Sunday. And it is a whole bunch of spiritualists. There's going to be people reading cards. It's an amazing event. And my subject is Weaving Your Destiny, a mystical approach to dream casting with Postcards to the Universe. So you can find out if you go to my website, if you go to Postcards to the Universe, I'll have the information link up there. But I asked it on my socials. So really you can find it on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So you can just find the link. But it's called The Abundant Life, a Harvest Celebration of Spirit and Expansion. So I just wanted to share that. Go to Postcards to the Universe, my YouTube channel. I'll talk about that on there too. And I've been doing these short videos. I made a deck of oracle cards. I've been reading those. I'm learning tarot. I've been playing with that. That's all on there. So I'd love to see you over there. All right. So now let me get to my guest today, Alexandra Beller. She is a celebrated choreographer, a director, and educator with over 25 years of experience in dance, theater, and the creative process. A former company member of the Bill T. Jones Arnie Zane Dance Company, director of Alexandra Beller Dances, and professor at universities throughout the country, she has since become a sought-after mentor, helping artists and students cultivate brave, embodied, and meaningful creative practices. She is an award-winning choreographer for theater and intimacy director, and is the author of 2 books, The Embodied Conductor and The Anatomy of Art, Unlocking the Creative Process for Theater and Dance. Anatomy of Art is a field guide for artists, a powerful blend of poetic insight, practical tools, and embodied wisdom that challenges makers to disrupt their habits, trust their instincts, and reimagine how they create. Whether in studio or on the page, she brings clarity, rigor, and deep care to the messy, beautiful work of making art. I love it so much. You can find out more about her. You can go to her website. It's alexandrabellerdances.org. I'm going to spell it since we're on radio. ALEXANDRA BellerDances.org. Welcome, Alexandra. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you. And I love the fact that you're doing creative work, because here's the thing. I think people think they have to be an artist to tap into their creativity. And I don't think that that is true, right? Like, I think part of what's going on in our world is because people are so unhappy because they are not tapping into the creative spirit. And that doesn't mean that you have to be a painter and be showing at galleries, or a dancer, you know, doing a theater production. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but you don't have to. So share a little bit about like how you got into the journey of what you're doing right now with your art.
Yeah, I just want to say first that I 100% agree. And I feel like books like The Artist's Way are made to prove that point, that we are innately creative. If you look at our sort of first language of physicality, our bodies are innately curious. If you have had the pleasure of watching a baby explore and discover, and a toddler, you know that we learn the world, we ingest, metabolize, and we become ourselves through exploration, curiosity, and creativity. Everything that we become is because we are ingesting the world with a certain kind of attention and vigor, and metabolizing it in our unique way, and then making something from it. And as you said, the thing we make from it doesn't need to be, art with a capital A.
Right.
Where you decide to put your couch, what you decide to wear that day, how much salt you put in your soup, it's all creation. And I'm working right now with a client who works predominantly with disabled bodies. And I've been mentoring her, and we've been trying to come up with essentially like what's her signature method. And one of the things that came up in our conversation that I've been really holding in my space for weeks now is something I said to her, but kind of just in flow. And I said, people who are living in disabled bodies are the most creative people, because every aspect, even mundane things in their life, often requires that they find a way around, over, under, through, because the world's not made for them. And the world's not made accessible to them. So they have to figure out how to access what they need in a world that's not made for them. And for those of us who have like invisible disabilities like autism, et cetera, we may feel that way as well, even though it's maybe not visible to the world that we're doing so much adaptation. But our innate creativity is riding our lives, riding the constant change that is life. That is creativity. We are constantly creating our life. And yes, of course, you can have anything from a mild hobby through a profession that's more like a capital A art. But that's sort of irrelevant. Like the way you parent can be creative, the way you cook, the way you communicate, the way you put your words together. And I don't even mean like in a creative writing, but just how you articulate what it feels like to be you to other people. So I 100% triple down on what you said. How did I get into this? I feel like I do think sometimes you meet kids and you're just like, you're an unusual child. You're definitely like a very mature, creative, precocious something. And, sometimes that's trauma, and sometimes that's whatever else is part of, what we're born with, or, depending on what your belief system is around how we become us and what our usness is. But, whatever the algorithm of that is for you, whether that's, soul, spirit, astrology, whatever, like children have something and they're different from each other. And then, of course, there's all of this nurture or lack thereof that becomes them. And so I was always a very creative to the point of being an unusual child. And I did really fancy art with a capital A, first drawing and painting and singing. But when I took my first dance class when I was 8, I was like, oh, yeah, that's me. That's it. That's where I find myself. And that's really what it felt like. And I think my version of childhood had a lack of visibility for me. So not a lot of people were watching me. And so I think in some ways it wasn't just the being watched, it was the reflection of yourself that you get from people watching you that helps you feel yourself. And I sometimes, when I look back on it, I think I disappeared a little bit in the absence of other people, and dance, in addition to actually being physically visible for people, I experienced myself, and I experienced parts of myself that I didn't experience in conversation or in writing or in academia or in sports or any other place. It was like dance opened up access to myself and then made that self visible to other people. So it was quite a magical place for me to be.
That's beautiful. I understand that. I'm a visual artist. I'm a photographer. That's my background. And photography does that for me. I can say things in my work that I couldn't say in words and couldn't describe, in my photos. So I get that. But I have to say, I love what you said about disabled people. And because my sister, who passed away 3 years ago, was developmentally disabled, my sister Tony, and I have a nephew who was on the spectrum, who is very verbal but doesn't speak in words. And we take care of 10 girls. We have 2 group homes, and we take care of 10 girls in the disabled community. And my sister Tony, when you said creativity, she was the one, her and my nephew, both. I have never seen unconditional love expressed in a way that it is expressed from that community. And it made me think of her, and that was her expressing her creative, poetic side of who she was, because there was never judgment, like we do, like we quote unquote, whatever that normal is supposed to be, right? Putting people in categories. Like it was never like that. You know what I'm saying? And I never thought about it in terms of expressing creativity. And I love that you're doing that work and you're mentoring somebody right now doing that kind of work. That to me just touches my heart so deeply. That's really beautiful, actually. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And I feel like survival often has its own category for people. And, as you said in the beginning, it doesn't need to be, on a theater, on a canvas, et cetera. But I don't feel like as a society, we really understand the level of creativity that is necessary to survive. And anyone that's been in survival level situations, and you can go really extreme and say, plane crash and you're on a mountain and you have to figure out how to survive. You're like, let's use this and let's sharpen that and let's, make a trap, right? And you're creating, right? That's total creativity, survival level creativity. But I think also socially, emotionally, politically, et cetera, when we're in a survival situation, which, unfortunately, living in an ableist society, it does require a different level of adaptation and creativity from anyone who doesn't, quote unquote, fit in. And we don't honor the kind of creativity. So what this teacher and I are working on is how we can not only remind the people that are living in these bodies how creative they are all the time and how extra skilled they are at adaptation and creation, which is most of the skill set for movement improvisation is adaptation and spontaneous invention, right? We're talking improvisation. So we want to find ways to remind the disabled bodies, like, you are uniquely gifted at this. Like, you need to tap into how often you do this, but actually do it for pleasure and expression rather than survival. And then what can we learn from people who are so uniquely gifted at this? How can we bring their wisdom through their body into the room in a way that it can affect and teach maybe more able-bodied movers to listen to the level of constant adaptation and spontaneous invention that somebody in a disabled body has learned how to do. How can we learn from them? Because, of course, there's all of this hierarchy inside ableism of like, oh, you know, you're doing sort of a facsimile of dance. You're doing the best you can in your chair. And it's such an offensive, you know, version and vision. And we would like to figure out how to flip it and be like, oh, no. You know a ton of things that these people don't know. So how can we figure out, not only remind you how much you know, but bring it into the room so that they can absorb it and metabolize it?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, especially now watching my nephew grow up who is communicating with us all the time, but not in the way that I'm speaking to you, right? Like, but his understanding is that it's such a high level, and the way he navigates his life, right? I'm amazed at what he is capable of finding ways to communicate to us in different ways than talking. And he's verbalizing, but he does it and he manages it. And it's incredible to watch because this is how he is navigating his world, right? Like, so I see what you're talking about. Like, we need to, as a society, able-bodied, abled mind, whatever you want to call it. I don't know about that, but but just to be more, neurotypical, whatever that is.
Muggles. We call them muggles.
Yeah, exactly. I think we need to have conversations like this is important and realize that there's wisdom there for us, and there's things happening that are so much deeper than we are aware of, right? And I love that you talk about this, and I love that you talk about, you know, embodied creativity and what the body knows before the mind knows. So can you share a little bit about like what you mean about that for people listening?
Yeah. So not everybody will share this belief with me, but I will say from both empirical knowledge, the wisdom of my own experience in my body, and a lot of watching bodies, I have absolutely no doubt that the body has information that is not always part of our conscious mind. So, and it's not, you know, we can talk about trauma, and that's an easy one to see, but it's not just trauma. I think all kinds of feelings get stored in the body. One definition that I use for trauma is when we do not have enough time, durational time, to process and metabolize something that has happened to us. And some things that happen to us, we will never have. There doesn't exist enough time to process some of the, you know, worst things that can happen to a human being, which means you will always deal with some level of trauma in your life, and you're managing it. Other things I think can be metabolized. But there's something about that definition and talking about it in relation to time that I really like. And so if you think of it at a somewhat like reductive level, something happens. You do not have or take the time required to really process that. And that thing could be, you know, the way that your mom talked to you, or the way that a teacher talked to you, or a way that you felt in relation to other people your age, et cetera, right? And it doesn't need to be a trauma with a capital T.
Right.
You don't have the time or the resources or information, whatever, it doesn't get processed. It has to go somewhere. The feeling itself has to go somewhere. And one definition I've heard about emotion is that it's the mind's way of making sense of what the body is feeling. So it's like the body feels something, and then the mind is like, oh, you're sad, or oh, you're scared. But actually, the body, and we certainly know this from our adrenal system, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop, etc., the body often responds faster than we can catalog something. And that's well proven neurologically. We have something called the enteric nervous system. There's over 100 million neurons in the gut. So when people are talking about your gut instinct, your gut response, say it from your gut, that's real science. There are neurons in there that make the body react and act before we have any kind of conscious, like, oh, I'm scared, or I'm shrinking, or I'm retreating. So I notice in my own system, I have released a lot of the inhibition and shame around letting my body be authentic, meaning sometimes I'll find like my shoulders come up near my ears and my hands are in little fists underneath my chin, and I'm like, oh, that's a young part of me that's having a feeling right now. And of course, I don't do this in every situation. I'm not like, teaching a class at Princeton and becoming 5 years old unless it's indicated and I'm framing it. I have done it in college classes, but in a very particular way where I'm talking about it and then saying, like, I'm going to let this happen in front of you. I'm going to show you something. And I can basically like release the control on it. Basically, I feel like we all have a certain amount that we're controlling and inhibiting some of our parts from acting out and saying what we want to say and the way we want to say it, using the tone of voice, making the facial expression, letting our body do what it wants to do. I, over time, in my own body, have gotten quite a nuanced sense of I call it the mixing board of like my different parts. And I can basically just sort of turn the volume up and let one part like take over body. And I can still like speak as a 53-year-old woman, but my part of my body is 5 and is visible as 5. Like, and I can talk like an adult, but I can also talk to the part. I can talk to my fists under my chin and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" There's somebody really young. Yeah. So that's part of it. And then there's so much more that's in the body. And when we do a practice like authentic movement, which is simply moving without goal, destination, inhibition, etc., in front of a witness, usually one person is watching you and you have your eyes closed and you're just letting yourself move in exactly the way that your body wants to move. And that could be a big dance, or it could be curling up in a ball and rocking. It could be anything. It's not meant to be some performative experience or a beautiful dance or anything like that. Even when you're a very fancy dancer, it's meant to be just exactly what your body wants to say. And our body stops trusting us when we don't listen to it repeatedly. And of course, we often have to ignore the body. It's simply like living in late stage capitalism. I have to show up for the class, and part of me does not want to go teach that class. And I want to do something different. But we're going to go show up for the class, and we're going to be 53, and we're going to take care of other people, and we're going to make a strong frame for the room, and we're going to do what needs to be done. And my body doesn't always want to do that. And so if I don't make space for my body later to express itself and to repair a little bit, like when you've dragged your toddler around all day and then in the grocery store they melt down. And really the only reasonable thing to do is to like say, okay, forget about my groceries right now. This is what's really important. And then you get down on, a knee and you're like, buddy, I'm so sorry. I have not been listening to you, and you've been asking me all day for something that you want, and I have been ignoring you and shuttling you around, and I want to repair it, and let's figure out what you need. And that toddler in that moment may not be like, oh, okay, great, thanks.
Yeah,
let's do this. Right. They may be like, I don't believe you. I don't trust you. You said we do this after that, and then we didn't do that. And, right. Parts of your body can feel like that after sitting at your desk all day, or, sticking to your schedule, or showing up for everybody but yourself. And the body needs some attention and repair and listening, and just the way your toddler would need it if they lost faith that you were listening to them. So, and when I say that, I'm like, oh, that's sad. If I imagine one of my kids being like, whatever, I don't really tell you anything anymore because you never listen to me anyway, and it doesn't make a difference. Like, oh, that's heartbreaking. And most of our bodies are in some version of that state with us, where they're like, whatever, you take me to the gym and you think I'm working out, and, like you think but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to swing on the swings, or I wanted to lay in bed, or I wanted to have ice cream and you wouldn't let me, or, and of course that doesn't mean we just do whatever we want whenever.
No, it's really making me think about how we don't listen to our bodies, and how we can release, release our bodies to be able to express what it needs, right? Separate from what our mind thinks it needs, or our mind is telling us we must do. I want to talk more about that when we come back. I just looked at the time. We are at the halftime mark. Let's take our break here, and we're going to talk more when we come back. Stay tuned, and I'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
Hi, I'm Melissa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on Om Times Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives. Welcome back. I'm speaking with artist, choreographer, dancer, creative, and author Alexandra Beller, and we were talking about our bodies and listening to our bodies and using our bodies for creative expression. So, is there some kind of for anybody who's listening, Alexandra, who is like, that sounds really cool. Like, I need to allow my body to express itself. And maybe, you want to do it in private in your bedroom. Is there like prompts that you help with your students? Like, they should, I don't know, do 10 jumping jacks just to move the energy, anything that I'm just spitballing here, just coming out, anything that I can think of. But like, do you tell people of certain things that they can do to kind of move that energy in their body? Stuff that we could do?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very case specific, and part of what I'm really interested in is like, what does your body want? And so I think, I certainly believe movement is great for us, and movement is great for the body, the mind, the mental health, etc. And there's nothing wrong with any kind of movement unless you're doing it to punish yourself in any way, or, doing it in any kind of self-abusing way. Which, we do sometimes, right, at the gym or weight loss or whatever, where we get so focused that it becomes self-harm. But barring that, I'm a huge fan of any kind of movement you do is great for you and will benefit you and benefit your life. What we're talking about, though, is so much deeper and more nuanced, and I think it does require shedding this obedience to outside information as an authority over our bodies. And another belief I have is that our intuition, we sort of jokingly or gently, lovingly refer to intuition as a sixth sense. But I think actually, biologically, intuition was meant to be our sixth sense, but we train ourselves out of using it. So if you, we're born with the privilege of vision, but for most of every day, you had to keep tape over your eyes and you couldn't use your eyes for most of the time. Your vision would not be a very dependable, advanced sense for you, right?
Of course.
And of course, other, as we know from people who are born without that privilege, like other senses do come online even greater. I think that we essentially, most of us are conditioned. We have tape over our intuition metrics for most of our life. And the whole, like, you're 5 years old, you again are learning through curiosity and discovery, and your head is wildly wandering around and you're looking at everything and you want to say things and you want to ask things. And then somebody tells you at about 5 years old, sit down, look straight ahead, don't move, and be quiet. And do what I tell you to do. And even in, more loving educational systems, for the most part, once we stick a child in, a fairly Western education, they are, and then we say, well, what does the doctor say about your body? And what does your parents say about your body? And what does the media say about your body? And et cetera. We start losing our signals, and the metrics for intuition are all these other senses: vestibular, proprioception, interoception, which is your sense of what the inside your, like when you can feel things in your organs or your gut. Oh, I'm bloated. That's interoception. Proprioception is looking at the world, but yourself in relation to it. How far away are things at this velocity? How long will it take my hand to get to the cup so that I know to open my hand around the cup? That's proprioception, and vestibular is like equilibrium responses. Those are just some of the things that are, I think, the scientific metrics that would underpin the sixth sense of intuition. But we get conditioned out of it. You eat at a certain time. You do this in this way. Your body should be this size, regardless of your, natural makeup or your metabolism or your Ayurvedic type or what, like none of this information, none of our individualization really comes into play. There are these standards and goals and milestones, and you've hit this mark. And we're not asking, could you imagine if from when they're really young and we're trying to understand what it's like to be that particular child, if in the doctor's office, in addition maybe to blood pressure and weight and height and blood, we were like, how does breathing feel to you? Like, do you notice sometimes you breathe only little and sometimes you breathe really big? Do you notice which times you breathe little? Oh, I don't breathe a lot around my dad. Oh,
Right.
What's going on there?
Right.
And we don't need to wait for a bruise on your body and for somebody from Child Protective Services to say that you're being abused, because your body is going to be communicating. And if we made real invitations from a very young age to like, I don't know the answer, maybe your body knows the answer. What does your body say? And if we really respected what their bodies were saying, and, I'm a parent, so I get that it's like I made dinner and it's dinner time and I need you to eat your dinner, and I get that. And at the same time, like, that kid's not hungry at that time on that day, or their body really wants something that you didn't make. And I'm not just saying like, give in to every whim and every request. There's an ecosystem in the house, and we all count, and, parents count too. And there's just such a conditioning against the truth of the body. And I think it just trains us out of real intuition. We have some.
I agree. And I notice to me that my creativity always stems from my intuition. They're connected, completely connected. And I'll get intuitive hits, and then I'll create something. Some download will come to me because of an intuitive hit, and I want to create something, and then I create whatever kind of art I'm working on at the moment. And it's interesting you were saying that about, we're putting especially kids in these boxes. And I have a niece who is 15, and she is immensely creative. And I watch her put herself in this box of trying to fit into the westernized school system. She's a junior. And I told her, I go, you got more left behind you than in front of you. You get through it, I know, but you're going to be able to create what you want. Just right, I can see how she has to bring herself down. Yeah. Because she is such this creative person, and she has so much, and her unique way of expressing herself, right? She has to shut all that down so that she can finish, and graduate school like we're supposed to, kind of thing. Yeah. But you talk about and about the habits, about dismantling habits, and why it's so important for artists. So let's like segue a little bit into that, right? Because that's what we got conditioned into habits. Like you said, we eat at a certain time, we do this at a certain time, we go to school at a certain time. So how do we dismantle some of these, and why is it important for the artists or the creatives?
And I will absolutely answer that. I'm going to caveat the answer before I give it by saying habits are also great and useful and necessary. Yes. And we need habits. Otherwise, everything would be invention and we'd be exhausted by noon. And like, I don't need to invent which pocket I hold my keys in. I don't need to invent, like certain habits allow us the stability to be. So in one of the practices I teach, which is called Laban movement analysis, there's a concept called stability mobility. And essentially it's saying that for every amount of mobility that you want, you need equal amount of stability, and vice versa. For every amount of stability you want, you need a certain amount of mobility, which is why bridges are made to sway. And if you stand with your eyes closed, you'll notice your feet are doing all these micro adjustments. That's what's stabilizing you, right? The more brittle, rigid you are, the less stable you are, right? So stability mobility is this, we call it a lemniscate, like a Mobius band, or this, infinity sign, this interconnectedness, interdependence. So there is a stability to habit and then a mobility to creativity. And so we need some habit to keep us stable. And then we need some absence of habit or novelty or void or empty space for invention. And we just tend to bias towards habit. So I caveat it because I don't want to leave with the impression that, like, you should arbitrarily break all your habits. Some of those habits are really useful and nourishing and lovingly protective of your energy or your boundaries or, et cetera. I have a habit. I don't keep my phone ringer on. That protects my peace, right? And I like that habit.
Too. So do I.
And then I have other habits.
I have the same habit. A do not disturb is on a lot throughout the day.
And then I have other habits that inhibit my invention. So that one doesn't inhibit me. That one protects me. But I have other habits, and it's not that you shouldn't write in your writing chair that you lovingly arranged in your living room and you made a beautiful little spot for you to do your journaling, and that's great. And when all of the factors are similar, the output's gonna be similar. So, if you're fine with your journaling being a pretty similar practice, that chair is working great for you and that habit works great. If you are writing poetry or a screenplay, or you're writing something and you're like, I don't want this to be like the last thing I wrote. I want this to be different. Just something as simple as changing your location, changing your environment, changing your oral environment, what you're hearing, changing what you're looking at, changing the kind of clothes you wear, being barefoot instead of wearing shoes, etc. Like, any novelty is going to shift the nervous system enough that it stimulates new thought and new idea. So, even something simple, and, I use this as an example of a positive habit, but it also could be a habit to break. Take a different walk home from work. Get on your bike with your other leg. Brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Anything that you do that disrupts the familiar synaptic pathways, alerts your brain to, wait, something's not the way it always is.
Yes.
And you wake up. And that awakeness is part of what we started talking about in the beginning around disabled bodies having to be so awake all the time because the world is not just naturally laid out for them. So they're not really afforded the luxury of habits in the same way that, people in more able bodies are, right? Like, I can reach for the elevator button's always at a fine place for me. I can always reach it. And I could reach with either hand and, so easy, right? But sometimes that's not true for a body. And so they have to invent something in that moment. So their level of awakeness is higher. And so what we're looking to do in ourselves is find places where it is healthy and fertile to wake ourselves up, and other places where, like, that comfort and stability of habit is nourishing and lovingly protective.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Of course, some habits we definitely need to have that keep us going and keep society going, right? Of course, we know that, right? You can't be a pilot and decide my body doesn't just feel like flying today. Yeah, right. It doesn't work that way. But I want to, because I'm seeing that time is going by so fast. I want to talk about your books, The Embodied, Conductor, and Anatomy of Art. Share a little bit about either but both, or if you want to pick Anatomy of Art, the Field Guide for Artists, and talk a little bit about what your books are about and what you want people to gain from your writing.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And neither of them have released yet. They're both coming out in 2026.
Oh, okay.
The embodied
Congrats.
Thanks. The Embodied Conductor is really a supplemental textbook for conductors around embodiment, which seems odd that they don't. It's not a major driver in their practice, but actually, music theory and pedagogy are really some of the major drivers that they use to teach conductors, and yet their entire thing is a dance. And it was a revelation. My co-author, Dr. David Vickerman, brought me into San Jose State University when he was creating his first wind conductor symposium, because I had taught him this practice of movement analysis, and he was like, I want you to teach my conductors. And it became such a beautiful exchange that first summer we decided, let's write a book about this. So that's that book, and it's pretty niche and specific. Yeah. My book is a solo project, and I have been working on it for 9 years, and I handed it in a week ago yesterday to Bloomsbury. And so it's a synthesis of a lot of my experience being an artist, and then a lot of experience being a coach and facilitator for other artists and supporting them and making their work. And there's nothing quite like really tuned in mentorship. Where the mentor doesn't have an agenda. They're not trying to get you to be them or do something that they want you to do. They're really trying to support you being the most you can be. And they're really curious about who that is. And they're also, they're cheerleading you, but they're also providing enough rigor and obstacle that you have to push and stretch and elasticize and challenge and move obstacles out of the way and get creative, right? And we started off talking about how the original form of creativity biologically is adaptation. And so I am naming a lot of the facets of the creative process from my own experience. And I and other people could have I picked 12 topics, could have picked 12 totally different topics, and nobody would be wrong. But I said these are some of the most important things in my estimation: time, space, relationship, meaning, environment, process, facts, faith, communication, material, context and culture, and priorities. So those are my 12 chapters. And in each one, there's a journey from like more conceptual, theoretical, to embodied, to creative, to practical. And so it starts with an essay, and then there's tips from the essay, and then there's a framework to be able to use some of those things in practice. There's writing prompts, there's an embodiment exercise, there's a creative practice exercise that's not meant to create a product, but meant to practice a set of actions or a mindset. And then there's a score that's meant to produce something. And then there's a bunch of questions at the end of every chapter for you to ask yourself in the studio when you're hitting a wall on that topic. So when you're, say if you're a choreographer or director and you're like, what is wrong with this? And I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Okay, so does one of these words feel like it's the portal to this question, this wall you're hitting? Yeah, it feels like it's about relationship. Okay, so go into the relationship and go into the questions and see if one of those questions is the question that's going to shake up your snow globe a little bit. Because often that's most of what I do in the room is like I try to ask just the right question. So how do you feel like what strategies are each of them using to get what they want? Or, where in their body do you feel like that actor has not committed to this action, or whatever the question is. And when I'm in the room with them, it's easy, but being, outside and trying to respond to everybody's art through a book, that was the hardest part. Was like, what's the question that's going to totally open something up based on me having zero information about what you're making, who you are, what you care about.
Right.
How do I write a question that's really specific that will help almost everybody, that doesn't offend anybody, but gets to something, isn't generic? It's not a AI kind of question. It's like a,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really specific question. And that was the hardest part for me, was figuring out those questions.
Oh yeah, it sounds really great. I'm excited for you, and it's coming out in 2026. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. Now, how did you find the writing? Did you enjoy sitting down and writing as somebody who likes to dance and movement? Did you find it difficult? Because I've written a book, and for me, writing the book is not my first love of creating the art. So it was a practice I had to get
Yeah.
myself to do. I had to give myself I gave myself a timeline. I had certain hours of the day that I contributed to my book because I wanted the book to be born.
Yeah.
I had to write the book for it to be born.
Yeah.
But the writing for me is not what I enjoy the most. So I'm just curious, as somebody who loves theater and dance and
Yeah.
and that, how you have found the
Embodiment.
writing.
Yeah.
Embodiment, yeah.
It was quite a process, and lucky for me, I was writing a book about creative process, so I got to try on and model the things I was talking about in the book in my writing practice. And I was like,
Okay.
why don't you try breaking a habit here? Why don't you try, and like, you're talking about this, why don't you try that?
Right.
One of the biggest things that was a learning curve for me that I do feel like eventually I got to is, I think, one of the quintessential skills that every artist needs, which is understanding and really embracing, celebrating their own individual process, and not trying to fit their process into a mold or an outcome or compare it to somebody else's process. And eventually I got to really love writing, but I also discovered, like, there are certain parts of the writing process that I love and other parts that feel very strenuous. And I started to also love the rigor of the strenuous parts, but I needed the landscape. I needed to map it to say, okay, I really like that first, very creative. I don't outline. I do like just divergent thinking, like stream of consciousness. I write something and then I'm like, then I analyze it. I'm like, what's in this? What am I trying to say?
Yeah.
That's the part for me that became painful, was like the real rigor of, I want to put pressure on my thoughts. I want to have really challenged this thinking. That was the part that became strenuous. Then I started to learn how much I could enjoy grappling, just the way that we can enjoy doing abs, right? And even though it's work, like, you can get yourself into a mindset where you're like, it also feels very alive and it feels like powerful and it feels good. And I'm like, yeah, this grappling also feels good. But I needed to remember what part of the process I was going into, and also check in with myself. And this goes right back to one of our first things about, authenticity in the body. Do you have that grappling in you today? No, I don't. I need to be methodical today. Okay, go back and edit something else. Don't try to grapple today. I need to be free and creative today. Great, write something new. And I needed to understand what the book needed and what I needed, and to negotiate between them in a very conscious way. And once I learned to do that, all I wanted to do was write my book, and I was kind of resentful about having to go teach classes or go to work. I was like, I don't want to stay and write all day. I don't want to do all this other stuff. I want to have an 8-hour writing block. And it became my joy and actually my pain that I couldn't do it.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad you had that experience.
Yeah.
We didn't even get a chance to touch. I just want to touch on this because we only have a couple minutes left, is making meaning in a world that wants product, art versus capitalism. Because especially when you're watching, if you're on social media and you're watching videos and short videos, it's like all about monetizing. And don't get me wrong, I would love to monetize, but I want to be my authentic self. I want to talk about and create what I want to create and talk about. So Yeah, there's a push for everything to be a product, and it doesn't have to be. So maybe you can just wrap us up with that, since we have a minute left.
I think that the most important aspect of that is tempo. And I think the thing that gets co-opted the most, and it's a nervous system thing, is our tempo. And in general, I think we're all moving faster than we really want to be moving. And that speed does not facilitate creativity and invention and authenticity in the way that we would value. So I think the most important FU to capitalism is to slow down. And if I could leave with something, it's to say the biggest revolution you can do is to slow down.
Oh my God, I just got goosebumps. We couldn't have ended it better than that. We couldn't have ended it better than that. Thank you so much, Alexandra. It was a really beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed having you on my show today. All right, everybody, go and check her out. Yeah, and thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. And I'm wishing everyone a wonderful week filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.